Hello everyone, welcome back to another light novel review. I am the Rat, and this is the Rat's Nest. I'm joined as always by Kyle. Say hi, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to talk about Purple Haze Feedback by, and I'm going to butcher this guy's name, Kouhei Kadono.
Which is the light novel that we're tackling today.
Yeah.
So, JoJo's again. We said in the last video, which was Thus Spoke Royal Hakushibe Volume 1, we'd be doing this because I read that, and then after we recorded that video, it was a Tuesday, I read Crazy Diamonds Demonic Heartbreak, which will be on Goobers and Screens, I think. I think that sounds cooler. So we'll put that on Goobers and Screens. But right now we're here with Purple Haze Feedback, the sequel to Golden Wind. So, spoilers for Golden Wind, and honestly, spoilers for all of JoJo. I mean, it's kind of implied, but
yeah,
just wanna get it out there. So, JoJo's is Kyle's favorite series of all time.
It's my favorite anime manga series. I really like it a lot, and I'm very happy that this author has such an appreciation for JoJo that he was willing to write a pretty amazing side concept for it. I mean, we'll talk about Crazy Diamonds Demonic Heartbreak later, but the Purple Haze Feedback is just a really solid story all around.
It's absolutely phenomenal. I love Part 5. Part 5 is my second favorite part, right after Part 7, which is my favorite. If you've read Part 7, it's probably your favorite part. Pretty generic opinion to have, but it's also a very correct opinion to have. So
it's really good. It's really good.
Part 5 is my second favorite part. I absolutely love it. I think it's the peak of the original stand battle formula.
Oh no, it's super good. It's stand battles in Part 5 are at their best in the old universe. I don't think that's controversial to say.
No, it shouldn't be. But yeah, and so this is the sequel to it, where we follow Pannacotta Fugo as he works to prove his loyalty to the new boss, Giorno Giovanna, after he betrayed the gang during Part 5. Uh-oh.
Yeah, do you mind if I give a little explanation as to why the story is happening in the first place?
Absolutely.
So during the events of Vento Aureo, up until the halfway point, at the halfway point, Bruno fights King Crimson and survives, and it's we're going to betray the boss. Everyone makes the decision to go betray the boss. Survives. Semantics. He gets out. He manages to get out, and he's going to go betray the boss. Everyone goes to join him, except for Fugo. And the reason being was this. Originally, as far as I know, Araki's original plan was that Fugo was going to be a traitor. He was going to be a spy for the boss, who would then return later, and they would kill him. Araki, at the time, didn't want to go down that route. I believe he was suffering he was going through a phase of depression and didn't want to write, friends killing one another, so he ultimately just wrote Fugo out of the story at that point. He was not written out. People who think that he was written out like this, because Purple Haze was too strong of a stand. He was written out because
weak. Purple Haze is weak and pathetic. Soft and wet clears.
Oh god, that's a discussion for another day. But Purple Haze and Fugo were ultimately removed from the story. They only had one stand battle, which was against Man in the Mirror. A very good fight, but yeah, Fugo really didn't get to do much during the events of the main series. So I appreciate Purple Haze Feedback for taking a character with as much potential as Fugo had, because Fugo was a very potential-filled character, and giving him a chance to shine, giving him his own content. If these were just 4 extra episodes added on to Golden Wind, I'd say Fugo would have been treated very well in his part.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that this is a great continuation of Fugo's story and a great dive into his character. You know me, big character guy. I really think that all the characters in this really shined. It's not a long book. I mean, I read it. It didn't take me long at all, right? It's not a long book, but it was very good. I think everyone... The thing about it is it felt so natural, right? Into the world of JoJo. It fit in so naturally with everything. It felt completely natural. Passione would have a narcotics team. Yes, the four characters, Vittorio, Angelica, I think her name was.
Angelica Volpe
And then Vladimir Kokaki. I think that's how you say it. I'm going to say Vladimir.
And we get a lot of new fun stands to talk about during this, because whenever it's never going to be released, but we did a JoJo stand tier list a while back. Did we do Purple Haze Feedback stands on that?
No, it was just mainline stands.
Okay, yeah. Well, this will be a good chance to talk about them, because
technically Purple Haze Feedback stands aren't canon, even though I consider Purple Haze Feedback canon the same way I consider Crazy Diamond Demonic Heartbreak canon, right?
And I agree with both of those.
The same way I consider Part 6 canon.
Yeah. This will give us a lot of fun stuff to talk about, and this is just going to be more, as Brent and I were talking about, more of like a free-form discussion of sorts. I had the wiki pulled up if we need to find the order of events, but this will just be us airing out our thoughts of Purple Haze Feedback.
That's what I did my past 3 light novel reviews. I genuinely enjoyed recording those episodes, and I remember the last one I did felt a little bit tedious before that, and so it's a nice change of pace. So without further ado, getting into, it feels so natural in the world of JoJo.
It does.
This guy, what's his name again? Kodono or something?
Here I can pull it up. His
Kadono?
name
Je ne sais pas.
It's Kouhei Kadono.
Kadono is so.
It's not Kadono.
Kadono is so talented. I think he has such a good idea as for what the JoJo world feels like. And Kyle and I have talked about this some kind of with this and with Purple Crazy Diamond Demonic Heartbreak, because they're both written by him. Where obviously Araki writes JoJo the best, right? You're going to read the JoJo manga, the mainline manga written by Araki. That's going to be your best JoJo. But Kadono, he comes in and he takes the world and he can explore stuff outside of Araki's expertise. I don't doubt that Araki could write something like Purple Haze Feedback, but it's not his specialty, right? Araki's specialty isn't deep character introspectives, and really, I think that's what Purple Haze Feedback is. I think that it's a story about Fugo and his mental state, and him as a character, and him growing from where he was during Part 5. Yeah, now, don't get me wrong. Araki does some awesome stuff with characters in the parts, right? I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm not saying he doesn't focus on his parts, but I know what you mean. Like Fugo, he was very in this story. He reflects on himself and he realizes that he was very mentally weak during the events of Part 5, and it's a lot of him trying to redeem himself to Passion and Giorno and like the people that he let down. And I agree with you in saying that it is an excellent exploration of the potential of Pannacotta Fugo. And unfortunately, the anime made a couple changes that make this not canon by the anime standards. Like they changed Fugo's backstory up a bit, but just cringe.
Yeah, unfortunately. There's some really cool fill-in-the-blank details here, like when we meet, who's the guy with all along the watchtower?
Morolo,
yeah, Morolo.
Canolo Morolo, it's a fun name.
Canolo Morolo, yeah. He was the one who supplied Risotto and Ghiaccio with the picture that Pericolo burnt up at the train station. He redid it all. He took the ashes and fixed the image back from that and then gave it to them. Whereas in the anime, it's just some random goon from Risotto. Yeah. Which, this is definitely more fun. The backstory also for Fugo, I personally think is a lot better. In the anime, it's just, some of your teachers being like a perv. And like that, yeah, I understand it, but that's, for wanting to make Fugo such an embodiment of anger, having it be like how it was in the original story, where his grandma died and he couldn't go because of his studies, and a teacher taunted him, and he just beat that teacher in with the dictionary, like that's more accompanying of Fugo as an embodiment of just anger and rage and hatred.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that was a change made to the anime to help people to understand to be more sympathetic with Fugo's character, as opposed to, because originally, Araki had an idea for Fugo that didn't come to fruition, right? Oh. And so maybe they put that into the anime to make him more understandable, right? Yeah,
given the limited screen time that he's get, that they have.
Now, of course, all they had to do was adapt it correctly and then make Purple Haze Feedback a movie, but
yeah. they had the ability of hindsight. They can look back and think, okay, well, this is what Araki wrote, and we know that Fugo has only like one stand battle, then he leaves. So how can we make him more sympathetic? Because in the original, it would have just been an embodiment of anger, just him, just angry against the world, and then meeting Passion, and then changing. But given, I mean, you know, I say all that knowing Purple Haze Feedback exists, but originally it would have been he was a spy trader who got killed. I like this direction a lot better with Fugo's character. You know, just someone who fails and he just can't bring himself to understand throughout the events of the story, like, why did they go do that? Why did they go get themselves killed? I was the only rationally smart one. They all just jumped to their deaths.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think I figured out the way that I can word it. Kadono is so good at filling in the details of Araki's writing, right?
Yes.
Because Araki writes everything in such a way that a lot of stuff with Fugo, obviously we didn't get to see him post, but like, look, for example, look at JoJo, right? The perfect example of an extremely complex character that Araki has written. That the details are kind of more implied, right?
Yeah.
Araki very rarely, if at all, comes out and states and describes like the mental state of a character or whatnot. Well, that's what's so good about Kadono's writing, and just writings like this in general. These spin-offs that get to spend more time on this is like with Fugo, they can be a real introspective on.
Here's a good way to word it as well. Araki is really good at writing manga characters. Kadono's really good at taking those manga characters and making them feel more human.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the first 6 parts and the first half of part 7 were Shonen Jump manga, right? You're not expected to have these deep character introspectives of a man searching for his purpose in the world and redemption, right? But you can have that be a subplot, you can have that be a subtext, and then have another author who is phenomenally skilled come in and fill in the blanks there. I mean, it really, I think it shows so well, right, that Pannacotta Fugo is a character that I think is really well regarded in the community and is generally regarded as one of the best characters in JoJo. And that's because of Purple Haze Feedback.
Yeah, Purple Haze Feedback carries Fugo as a character.
And that's because we've gotten to spend this one-on-one personal time with Fugo throughout this book and really gotten to understand him as a character, this amazing character that Araki introduced and Araki wrote, and then Kadono was able to, okay, like, this is never a story that Araki could have told in the main manga. Kadono is able to take these characters, this world that Araki set up, and then expand upon them skillfully. It's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, honestly, I'm like, for the fact that someone, because look, a lot of people, I'm willing to say, probably around this time, they had their own ideas for JoJo, and I think I can't say I know what he's thinking, but I feel like in order to write this story, I feel like he probably had to compromise on a lot of what he actually wanted to write about JoJo as a backstory like this, or as an exploration.
I think part 8 shows that a lot. Where there are a lot of grand ideas that maybe didn't fully, because part 8 that was his first part in the monthly Shonen. What magazine is it in? You would know, right?
Seinen?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, here's the thing. I'm talking about Kadono because I feel like a lot of people have these really cool ideas. Kadono is willing to write what's needed to make them feel more real than it is to just write, like, because whenever you hear the word fanfic, because this essentially is a fan fiction. It's not canon per se. I treat it as canon, though. This is an author wanting to write about a character from the main series. It's a lot better than what you would expect of a fan fiction of that type to be, because he gives the characters and the setting and the fights the respect that Araki would if he were writing this particular story as well, or something similar.
Yeah, and so then the question becomes, technically by definition this is fan fiction, but I mean, I guess it's at the point of canonicity whenever an author goes from being fan fiction to being official as the canonicity. You know, I don't know how Araki would feel about others taking up his work after he's gone, like Kentaro Miura, the author of Berserk. His assistants took up his work after he passed away. And
Yeah.
while I think Oda has said at some point that he has
That he
people who would continue One Piece whenever if something should happen to him. Now he's young. I mean, he's incredibly young. He'll have another manga after One Piece, which is insane to think about, but he will. It's very interesting. I don't know if Araki said anything over this. Part 9 will be the end of JoJo. I feel pretty confident in saying that. Of course, Part 9 is never going to happen, but Part 9 will be the end of JoJo. If Araki were to have someone come in to,
take up the torch,
right? I think Kadono would be a great example of that. Kind of like Dave Filoni kind of took up after George Lucas as like what a lot of people would consider like the face of writing Star Wars. Now that's an entirely different discussion, and I'd have to have it with Cade, and that would be a very interesting discussion. I don't know if I'd want to have it with Cade, but it's kind of a similar thing. But that's getting into the future. Purple Haze Feedback. It just feels like such a natural part of the JoJo's universe.
I like seeing Fugo interact with these other characters because given from all we know with Fugo in the first part, he just does things that like an angry person would, where it's like he just does irrational things, even if not angry a lot of times, because I mean he does get angry with a lot of stuff, like stapling Mista's stomach shut after the Kraftwerk fight, or like stabbing Narancia with like a fork, or like poking him with like car keys, just little things that show that he has some sort of anger problem. And you're gonna have to it's been a while for context. I read this a few years back. I obviously remember it a lot because I'm very passionate about JoJo and I remember a lot of what happens in it, but for the exact details, does he show a lot of anger issues in this one, or is this more of him just reflecting on the events and not being as angry and trying to better himself as a person?
He doesn't really have. He still does to a degree, right? Because there's still a part of his character, but this is a Fugo 6 months after all his friends have died, and he betrayed them. He betrayed his friends, and they died.
Yes, right? He's not acting angry. He's acting more so just.
I love how introspective he was. So specifically with the Narancia example, where he stabbed him with the fork. Right, oh my gosh, I love how the the Purple Haze Feedback completely recontextualized the scene from the manga, because in the manga and the anime you see it and you're like, oh haha, funny, Fugo's mad, he gets real angry over nothing. In Purple Haze Feedback, Fugo specifically remembers that event and was like as an example of how bad his anger issues get, where he's just like I can't control myself. He's like I never know what I'm gonna do. He said, I never know who I'm going to hurt. And he said, I don't even know what triggers it. He said specifically, he's like, how could something that small as Narancia getting a math problem wrong trigger to the degree that I would stab him with a fork? And it's that introspective of him discovering himself that ultimately leads to Purple Haze Distortion, or is that a weird translation of Purple Haze Feedback? Like, is Purple Haze Feedback the name of the stand, or is it Purple Haze Distortion?
We can just call it Purple Haze Distortion. I think Distortion sounds a lot cooler.
Yeah. Ultimately all that discovery leads to...
because here's the thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, you're all good.
So, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just saying, obviously that introspection leads to Purple Haze Distortion.
Well, because what I was going to add on top of that was, think about it like this. Stands are the embodiment of the user. Like they're the physical representation of the user's mental psyche. Purple Haze is a stand of, like, as this might be this is a paraphrasing from Bakio during the Man in the Mirror fight. Like it arrives like a storm and just like vanishes. Like it's just quick anger. Like it is a stand of rage brought on by Fugo's irrational anger issues.
It's irrational destruction for irrational rage.
Yeah, and like a virus that just kills indiscriminately, because we see his anger do that to his own comrades indiscriminately. That's a perfect stand that matches him, unfortunately, in the early part. So having him go through that change and like becoming a better person would definitely trigger a change in a stand. Like to that degree, like we've seen stands change and evolve. Like Echoes, for example. I know that one's like an act-based stand, I know, but every time it changes, Koichi goes through some sort of mental change for the better in himself, like with more resolve. And when Fugo, throughout his journey in this, at the end of it with Volpe, like whenever he changes and grows, like his stand changes into distortion. And I think that not only is that like a good way of just him changing, that's a great way of showing that change too as a stand user.
Yeah, no, totally. Fugo changes so much in this book. I he said I love the retrospection of his anger issues. I just love his retrospection on everything. I love getting his perspective on everything, where he's, admits how lost he is, admits how he failed, trying to find out what makes him tick, who is he, right? All that. I remember specifically because it was the big thing of the book, and ultimately the climax that led to him unlocking Purple Haze Distortion was him always flashing back to the boat. And he was standing there with Narancia, and Narancia goes, "Trish is just like me. Like those are my wounds," right?
That was
Narancia said, and he swims after him. And that there were tons of scenes called back to, right, with Fugo, where he remembered everyone else and how they interacted. That one was flashback to the most, and obviously that's because it was the big
that's the biggest moment for
big
Fugo.
Emotional climax of him finally unlocking Purple Haze Distortion, seeing Sheila E. there and realizing she's just like me. He realizes what Narancia realized back then, what he never realized up until now, what he could never do.
Yeah, to gain that sense of camaraderie for like one another, like a friend. You worded that very well. I can't really add on much more than he came to the same realization Narancia did, because Narancia was just held back by like fear and cowardice, and when he realized her wounds are like mine, that realization is just what helped Fugo grow as a person. I'm very, very happy that that's the sort of introspective or intro/retrospective that Fugo had in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Where then, once he finally understands himself, he's able to control his anger. He finally understands what makes him tick. And the same as he's able to control his anger, Purple Haze is able to control its virus. It's still there, right? Just like Fugo's anger, it's still there. The virus is still there, but he can control it internally. The virus kills each other. It's a very internal way of dealing with it. It's still destructive, and it's still there, but it's much less potent. I think
that's just a great way of summarizing Fugo's anger at that point too. Also, I will be right back. Sorry about that, everyone. I had to attend to something real quick. So yeah, we were.
Well, I think I like to think we touched on the character aspects pretty well. Let's talk about the funny stands. We got introduced to 6 new stands.
6?
Yes, Voodoo Child, the Marolos, and then we got Rainy Day Dream Away, Dolly Dagger, the Angelicas, whose name I can't remember. It exists, and Manic Depression. All named after Jimi Hendrix songs, which I've listened to all of them. They slap.
I think it's Nightbird Flying High.
Yeah, that's it.
So yeah, and as we talk about the stands, we also talk about the users. So first, one of my favorite stands, Dolly Dagger, simply because of how stupid fun it is to just think of as a concept. Dolly Dagger's entire build, and that is the stand of what's his name again?
Vittorio.
So Vittorio's Dolly Dagger, and I quote, deflects 70% of the damage done onto the user back onto the opponent. 70%. So an example of this would be Kraftwerk, because Sale shows up early on and is fighting the narcotics team. He goes to stop Vittorio's heart, and 70% of that ability gets reverted back onto him and his own heart. So isn't it when he moves, his heart just like gets pulled out of his chest because it's just stuck in place?
Yeah, because his heart is stopped, and so Vittorio pushes him back, and so yeah, his heart is just ripped out of his chest, and he dies. Lol.
And the way that he attacks people is by stabbing himself and having that damage go onto them. It is so over the top, but I love it as a stand power. So because that speaks a lot to his mentality as a stand user. All of these narcotic people are insane. That leads to them having these insane powers.
This guy, Kadono, is incredibly good at riding stands.
Oh yeah, no, like again, only second to Araki, I would say. Like these stands, I could just see them being, if not in Purple Haze Feedback, I could see these being like in like a Part 9 thing. I could totally buy these as stand powers.
Yeah, totally.
Because most people are like, oh, look at my overly wacky, cartoonishly gimmicky, over the top stand, and I mean that's like their fan stands. But this just feels like, again, as you were talking about natural, these stands feel like natural embodiments of the user's mentalities.
No, definitely. I think you have Dolly Dagger, which is a really fun stand. I think it's used very well. He faces his natural enemy with All Along the Watchtower. That's the name of it, right?
Yeah, you want to talk about that stand next?
Yeah, so All Along the Watchtower, Morolo stand. Morolo is an awesome character. Were you going to say something?
He's very drippy.
He is very drippy. All Along the Watchtower is a colony stand. I love colony stands. I think they're very fun. Metallica is really cool. And so it's 53 little assassins, right? And they can go out and do stuff. And the reason he's Dolly Dagger's natural enemy is because, well, you inflict damage on him, it does damage to his stand. So you have to get at least 53 hits in on yourself before anything happens to him, actually. Well, it transfers 1/53 of the damage. That's 1/53 of 70%. I'm not going to do the math. And so obviously Vittorio dies well before Morolo is even hurt.
He stabs himself to death. Because here's the thing. It transfers the damage, but like his injuries are still there. So he'll eventually kill himself by blood loss of stabbing, and that's just what happens. So All Along the Watchtower, this is one of... Again, I love what he adds on the stands. This is like one of the only times in JoJo where a person actively lies about their stand power to not give away what it does. Because most people are like, oh, I'm dying. Here's, like, I'm going to dox my stand power and all the other people that I know stand powers. They are very honest about their stand powers. It's like, ha, you fool, you didn't know that my stand could do this. It's like, well, you just told the good guys what your power does. As much as I love JoJo, yeah, it's the thing that happens a lot that's sometimes annoying. So I like Canolo Morolo's introduction, because when he introduces it as a type of clairvoyance where it's like, oh yeah, these stands just know, but in actuality, they're just little tiny spies that just go and gather intel and bring it back.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a great way of presenting the stand, because like the stand isn't super powerful or anything, but it's a really good stand. Because playing cards, they're small, they can like fit in between tight places. You want them to go get intel. They have crazy range, they go do it. And he lies about what his stand does. That's what I enjoy about it the most. Like, the stand is really cool, but I just love how he presents his stand to them, to not give away his ability. Because that's what a smart stand user should do, instead of, oh, here's my stand, it does this, and this.
Yeah. No, I think it's done very well.
Yes.
We also have, from the narcotics team, let's go to Nightbird Flying, or what is it?
Nightbird Flying. This one
flying
is very simple. It takes the form of a bird, automatic tracking of sorts. What it does is I'm just looking at the wiki ability. It's fast enough to catch up to a helicopter flying at 160 miles per hour.
Yeah, I think it said that it like locks onto the speed of its target.
It can track individual souls, and whomever it tracks will gain the symptoms of fatal drug addiction. They'll remember who they are, but it'll give them other symptoms like hallucination, make them feel powerless, and it says the ability. It only comes into effect if the target is within range. In addition, the degree of the effect is inversely proportional to the distance between the main body and the stand. So, if the stand is not close to the main user's body, it will be a very weak ability, like a weak effect. But hang on. Am I reading that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so like the closer, that's how stands operate. Like the closer Nightbird Flying High is to its user, which is Angelica, the more potent this ability will be. But then inversely, if it gets too far, it'll be weakened. It'll still do it, but it's just weakened.
It's also, of course, a good look into Angelica's personality, where she herself is a drug addict. Though kind of not of her choosing, with whatever, I can't remember. She was born with some disease or some disability.
I can Just real quick, hold on.
Yeah, it caused her to hurt, and the drugs produced by manic depression, we'll get to that next, are the only things that let her feel peace. And that's why she's one with the narcotics team and two so loyal to Massimo Volpe. Who, are you ready to talk about Massimo Volpe, Kyle?
Oh, yes, we can. And his stand,
Manic depression.
This is the main stand of like the bad guys, pretty much. Because first of all, I love Tonio Trendo, and Volpe and Tonio are brothers, and there's just such a good dichotomy to their stands, Brandon. Oh, I love their dichotomy of their stands.
It's a goodie.
We know what Pearl Jam does. It makes food help people, albeit in very strange ways. It was a stand brought about by like the pure want of helping people. And Volpe is just the complete opposite. It can turn salt into one of the most addictive drugs known to man. Also, it can turn its user into the Hulk.
So I think manic depression's specific ability is it enhances bodily functions, right?
Neurochemical manipulation. I'm joking about the whole thing, but it can neurochemical manipulation. It can increase heart rates, force irregular stomach digestion, increase one's own physical attributes for a couple of minutes, after which the body breaks down, and it can turn salt into a really powerful drug.
Almost seems kind of like an opposite to Pearl Jam. Wowee.
Yeah, it is.
And so, manic depression is such a cool stand.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a stand that, like, it's one of those stands that, like, just by itself, it would be terrifying, but then it can create drugs.
Yeah, which also the visual design of the stands, like that, look at Pearl Jam, like these like lively little tomato things, and then this one it looks like it's a tiny, frail, like it's small, ragged, it's like vomiting, like salt drug, it's just oozing. It's a perfect flip between his brother's stand. And one of my favorite moments from Purple Haze Feedback, and this will tie into us talking about Sheila E. after we talk about manic depression more, is when Sheila E. uses her stand to punch Volpe's body, and because her stand hits him, all of her bones in her arm just shatter, right?
Yeah, lol.
Breaks by punching him. And that's like, it can make your body so strong that it damages a stand that punches you, the user's body. This is a nutty stand.
It's a goodie. It's definitely worthy of the spot, but it isn't the most busted stand.
No, it's not. There's drawbacks.
It's not the most busted stand in Purple Haze Feedback.
Oh, you're right. Do you want to talk about an S tier stand real quick?
Want to talk about one of the best stands in JoJo real quick, Kyle?
Rainy Day Dreamway.
Ooh boy.
Woo! So, okay, first of all, doesn't he make it rain with his own ability?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so Rainy Day Dream Away. I'll just say this: it is very similar to Heaven's Door. And do you want to take? I've been explaining a lot of these. Do you want to take this one away, Brandon?
Yeah. So, Rainy Day Dream Away is the stand of Vladimir Kokaki. I think that's how you say it. I'm going to refer to him as Vladimir, as we said at the beginning.
Yep.
It is a stand that you're in the rain. He can lock a sensation that you're feeling in place for the rest of your life. For example, Fugo trips. Whenever he trips, Vladimir locks the sensation of falling, or was it tripping?
Like being off balance. That is the sensation that is locked.
Locked that sensation in Fugo, so he could never right himself, and he was always like falling and tripping. And whenever he was fighting Voodoo Child, right? Voodoo Child?
Yeah, Sheila E., for a split second, for one minuscule second, thought, there's no way we could beat this guy.
Locked that sensation in place. She can't beat him.
Yeah, she just can't bring herself. She doesn't have the will to bring herself to beat this guy.
This stand is absolutely insane. There's theoretically no limit to this. That's the scary thing about it. Those are the scariest stands in JoJo, the ones that don't have limits, and this one theoretically doesn't have a limit.
Yeah, it says, uses the target's momentum energy against them. No amount of distance will ever free themselves. The only way to escape it is to override the sensation with a similar greater one. And I accidentally spoiled a bit of this for Brandon, and I feel bad about it.
It was fine.
It didn't spoil the resolution of the fight, which is fine.
Yeah, so this stand was awoken back during World War II when he was escaping with his sister and his sister was dying. His stand awoken so that he could give her a full 80 years of happy life in her mind. And the last 2 minutes she lived.
That,
which is awesome.
Talk about, why do some of the best stand users come from actually just being in wars, like Axl Rowe?
Axl Rowe, Civil War. Man,
yeah,
that's a good stand. That's a good arc. I love Civil War.
We'll get there when we get there to part 7. But yeah, like this, because I forgot about that. But that's like a nice wholesome thing to do with it. So this stand, again, it could be used for good and for evil, like this. But no, this,
and that's also the thing with Voodoo Child, where when we'll talk about it, it punches you share your deepest feelings.
Yeah.
Rainy Day Dream Away. Vladimir doesn't have any regrets or any pushed away feelings. He's completely out there in the open.
Mm-hmm.
It's just oh.
Yeah. I also like the visual design because I'm looking at the picture of it. It's showing a leaf, and the rain droplets itself have
the rain. I think is the stand, right?
Yeah, and you can't really punch that.
Yeah. So it's such a good stand, and there's theoretically no limit to it. Fugo only beats it by becoming a meteor.
I mean, he has Purple Haze throw him up into the air, so him falling overrides the sensation of tripping.
Yeah, because while you're falling, you can't be off balance.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting way he comes down and just kills him immediately.
Let me think about it. Let's say you're running at him, and he's boom, you lock the sensation of you're moving fast. So you just cannot stop moving fast. I assume that's how it could work. If you're I'm gonna rush this guy, and then boom, you're just locked into only running.
Okay, Kyle.
Potentially.
Okay, no, I was gonna say, does this beat Go Beyond? No, it doesn't beat Go Beyond. Nothing beats Go Beyond.
We'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, that's an entirely different discussion. The Spark Notes version of it is Soft and Wet Go Beyond is the strongest stand and beats every single other one, including GER. We will not be elaborating. Sheila E. and Voodoo Child. It's a cool stand. I really liked her character during this.
As a support stand, I really, really enjoy this one because it just leads to a lot of interest. It's an interesting power.
This is one of those stands that it's weird because it's the perfect accompanying stand, it would make total sense for someone with Voodoo Child to be with the protagonist, right? It's just it's such a good stand. It's pretty versatile, and I could see it being used very well in a lot of different arcs, and it would be fun to see different powers kind of get around it. I think that of the stands shown, it's the one with the most potential that maybe was a little bit underused in my opinion, but also when were the opportunities to use it. I think it's a stand that I would love to see more of later. I don't think we got to see its full potential in this.
No, not yet. I would agree. There's also 2 pieces of trivia for it. That's what I was going to say.
What are they?
It says Voodoo Child is the first novel-only stand to have a battle cry. And the sound it makes when it attacks is E-R-I. I was trying to mimic it's like
not like Zipper Man.
Yeah, it's the only one to have a battle cry so far. So the power itself is when it punches something, a pair of lips appears. Now, not only can those lips be used as actual lips, to bite someone, and whenever the lips appear, the lips just talk about what was said recently within the general vicinity. Also,
not even said. I think it's the dark thoughts that people were harboring in the general vicinity.
Lips. Okay, hold on. I'm just looking at it.
It's the stuff that's buried beneath. It's the stuff that's buried in you.
If Voodoo Child punches a person, this is what it says: the lips reveal the deepest secret from a person. I don't see where. Yeah, the lips repeat whatever was said by anyone that was near the punch location.
Okay, well that's my misunderstanding of it then.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So it does three things as far as we know. It can function like actual lips, like the lips can just like bite people or whatever, pull on objects, whatever. It can be used to like hear what was discussed in a general range. You can also hit a person and have the lips reveal their inner secrets. It's a cool power.
It is a very cool power.
It is a very fun power. I also
we get to see it used during Zakaro's fight. We get to see it used.
It's like a rat.
It is. It's very cool.
It's all these stands are good. I mean, obviously my least favorite would probably just be Nightbird flying, but it's still pretty cool. I love all these stands. They're really interesting stands.
Kadono really is very talented at writing stands.
The users too are pretty cool.
Definitely. So, with all that said about the stands, there's at least one more thing I want to touch on.
Ooh, is it what I think it is?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what you Giorno?
The stone mask.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the stone mask real quick, and then I'll say my piece about Giorno. I love the way Giorno was presented. Anyways,
and then we can talk about the story.
Yeah. So the stone mask, I love that it came back. That was so cool. See, as we said at the beginning, this is by definition fan fiction, right? And so you're going to have a lot of references to other stuff. It was still so awesome to see Stroheim mentioned, and it makes sense because it's Italy. The Germans occupied Italy, right? I loved the reference to his death at Stalingrad, and I loved the stone mask. That was so cool.
Especially it was just a nice reveal to see. Also, the fact that Passion worked with the Speedwagon Foundation. Oh, that was such a cool reveal.
I loved that Giorno was tasked with destroying the stone mask, like kind of to prove like, hey, you're not going to become your dad, right?
It also goes to show that like Giorno is known to be a good entity in the world if he can work with the Speedwagon Foundation.
Yeah, but I do love how Marolo was like, yeah, Giorno sent me on this mission because he wanted to avoid the stone mask, to avoid any suspicions from the Speedwagon Foundation.
Yeah, that was such a nice thing.
I really liked it. It was so cool to see that, right? And to see this thing that like we understood, but that they didn't. They were just like, oh, it grants eternal life, right?
The bad guys were going to use it to give Volpe a power up, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think that was the plan.
They were going to turn him into a vampire.
But I don't think they knew that it would turn him into a vampire.
No, I'm just saying like that without knowing, that's what they were going to incidentally do. They were just going to turn him into a vampire.
Yeah. But man, that was such a cool plot point. I really did enjoy that.
What a nice addition by the author. I'm very happy.
Very cool.
Added that. So what were you going to say? Oh, you make your piece with Giorno. Then we can talk about the story for a bit, because this has a really good story.
So Giorno was presented so well.
Yes.
Really, like, oh my gosh. I always love it. The big thing in JoJo is, the battle between Jotaro and Dio, right? It's the big midpoint of the series. Pretty much everything before it leads up to it, everything after it happens because of it, kind of.
Yeah, big climactic battle.
And it's always references like whenever Jotaro killed Dio, right? I love that being referenced. I loved in this book getting to see Giorno versus Diavolo be like, yeah, no, this was a huge event. Like, and Giorno being portrayed as like a legend, right? That was so cool, and like how he was presented with that. Specifically, though, I want to say how Shili mentioned something. At one point in the book, she asked Fugo, "What do you think of Giorno?" And Fugo said he seems kind of withdrawn and kind of like there's a lot of potential there. Right. And he said he seems kind of withdrawn, but like there's a lot of potential there. And he seems kind of like that he holds back a bit. And Sheila E said, I can't remember the exact quotes, but Sheila E was like, Giorno asked me what I thought of him. And I said I thought he was honest. And he said, you think I'm honest because you're honest. And then she said, look at Mista. Mista looks at him and says, Giorno's lucky. Well, that's because Mista's lucky. He says, people see in Giorno is a reflection of themselves because, and she words it, Giorno is so unfathomable that it's like looking into the ocean. you only see the reflection of yourself. I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a good way to put Giorno's character. Because Giorno is so often referred to as like a blank slate of a protagonist, right? He's so often referred to, oh, he's a boring protagonist, yada, yada, yada.
I hate that so much about Giorno. Giorno is very interesting. It's just people don't give him the time of day. And that wording of it being like looking at him is like looking into the ocean and seeing what you reflect that's just beautiful wording by Kadono.
Yeah. It's like, oh my gosh, that's such a good portrayal of Giorno.
Because it's
so accurate.
In the events of Part 5, like, Giorno, in all the stand battles, like the key word for Part 5, oh god, take a shot every time the word resolve is said in Part 5. There's a lot of resolve going around, and it's characters seem like, man, Giorno's resolve is motivating me in my resolve. And taking this, it's like, no, they've had the resolve in them all this time. It's just Giorno that's making them realize it. And I like that. I like that with Giorno. Giorno, he's such a good leader when you think about it in terms of that, because they see in him what they unknowingly see in themselves, and that helps motivate them. And I like that for Giorno a lot.
And I think it works with who he is, right? Because Giorno, being the son of Jonathan and Dio, right?
Yeah.
He's already such an unique figure, right? He's such an impossible person to exist, right? The odds of him existing are, I mean, how can you even describe it, right? And his conviction towards it. Giorno is like the shining light of this world, and that's what's I loved that portrayal of him, especially where Fugo was thinking of his relationship with Bruno, because he was like really, Bruno was caught up in Giorno's dream, and we were caught up with Bruno's dream. And I was like, and then he said eventually everyone who meets Giorno comes under his dream as well. It was with Sheila E., right? And we saw it especially with Marolo, who was like, before, I didn't care about anything. He said I didn't care if I turned traitor. He's like I turned traitor on anyone. And he said, Giorno told me. He said, you were never a traitor because you were never trusted. He said you can't betray people if you were never trusted. He said, you never trusted anyone, no one ever trusted you. You can't be a traitor. And that spoke to Marolo. And Marolo said, he's like, I have someone I don't want to disappoint now. He said, I have someone who trusts me, and so I'm going to trust them. Meeting Giorno changes people. And I love how that was shown in this, because it's the perfect representation. It's kind of an antithesis, right, to what we're seeing in Crazy Diamonds Demonic Heartbreak. Kind of spoilers for that, where very light spoilers, where we're seeing the aftermath of Dio on people. Dio being a very controlling and a very charismatic person, right? Dio was a figure that you could not ignore. Dio was like Giorno, but you can, looking at Giorno and the way that Giorno is portrayed in this book, you can very clearly see that he's portrayed as a very Dio-like figure. Dio, obviously God, right? And I really think that Giorno lives up to being the son of God, right? He's such a large figure, but he has Dio's charisma, and he has Dio's ability to get people around him. He has Dio's ability to let people believe in him, but he has Jonathan's heart.
And right? that's the key difference between these two.
It's the epitome of Giorno's character. With Giorno being a minor character in this and just being mentioned and being reminisced on by these characters. And we only get to see him twice.
Yeah.
This book presents Giorno in such a perfect way.
Because you can also
it's Fugo's story, and we get to see Giorno's character perfectly. And I think that goes to show just how talented Kadono is with character writing. Because I love Giorno. I love Giorno's character. But, it can come across as a bit dry in Golden Wind. And, we can talk about Giorno's character in Golden Wind all we want. But the way that Giorno is portrayed, and the way that others see him, and the way that he's described, and the way that he's shown, they're just all so perfect, right? It so perfectly encapsulates Giorno's character. Kadono is so talented to be able to portray all of that with how he wrote Giorno into this story that wasn't Giorno's story. And maybe that even is a bit more of Giorno's story. Giorno's character, where it's not Giorno's story, and yet he's still there. He's still this overarching presence. He's still that comfort, that light, right? I think that really shows how Giorno is a character that Fugo knew for 3 days, right? And he still has the impact that he had on Fugo. It's so good. I love Giorno. I love the way that Giorno is presented in this.
That was very well spoken, Brendan. I just want to say, you could take a lot of what you're talking about now and showing, like, with how Giorno acts as an antithesis to Dio, even though they both do very similar things. Like, albeit, yeah, a lot of people's interpretation of Giorno is dry or bland. You can apply a lot of what you're saying into Part 5, like, with all the events, because a lot of the first half of Part 5, even creeping in the second half, because it takes the Clash and Talking Head encounter for Narancia to get on board with Giorno. Like, it's other characters in interactions with Giorno, and I'm gonna try my damnedest not to talk about White Album, because we'll save. Yeah, but you get a lot of this very engaging one-on-one tie with Giorno with these characters. Abakio gets like 2 encounters with them before he like picks on, or before he, before he gets sucked into Giorno's like charisma, I guess you could say, even though he doesn't like Giorno. Yeah, every character.
And that's the thing. I think it's a difference of perspective, because in the anime we're looking at Giorno in the same position that has been filled by Josuke and Jotaro and Joseph and Jonathan.
Yeah,
right?
He's the protagonist, and then in Purple Haze Feedback, we see him as this like legendary figure. He is the man.
We see him as he is in the world, as opposed to our perspective of him. Right? We see how those in the world view him.
The world?
What? This is what we're. That's so true.
Sorry, but yeah, that was well spoken about Giorno. I agree with a lot of what you said. I agree with everything you said. I'm just so sad that people are so willing to just overlook Giorno. And again, this is a lot of it coming from Purple Haze Feedback. Like, Araki did a great job writing Giorno, and there's a lot you could say about Giorno as a character just in Part 5, isolated by itself. But Purple Haze Feedback just adds so many more layers to Giorno and just does his character so much justice as well. Not that his character wasn't given justice in Part 5, but to actually see the end results of what happened after he took over, and to see how other people change based on their interactions with him. It's just a wonderful thing to experience through Kadono's writing.
Kadono's absolutely amazing at writing characters.
Kagoto.
What more can we say? Like. We don't talk about Part 6. We don't talk about the Children of Dio. God, I hate them. I hate them so much, specifically because of how much I love Giorno and how much they just.
We'll get there. We'll get there when we get there. We'll get there when we get there.
We'll get there.
Yeah,
not this video, but
do
my
we
gosh.
Want to talk about?
I hate the Children of Dio so much.
Do we want to talk about the story real quick? Since we talked about characters, themes, and stands, we talked about a lot. So I think the only thing we haven't really talked about is the story. So do you want to talk about that?
I mean, yeah. I mean, whatever we haven't touched on, it's Fugo and Shili going to their. They're tasked by Giorno through Mista to track down the narcotics team that we've talked about, and to get rid of them, because obviously Giorno, his whole thing was I hate drugs, and it's like, well, that's pretty based. And so they hunt down the narcotics team with the help of Marolo. We get to see Sale and Zucchero, and they dominate L.
Man,
it was Zucchero's fight was interesting because of what we got to see from Voodoo Child. And all the stand fights were really fun, and we've talked about the character. I've talked about the character writing in depth of Fugo and Giorno, who I really feel are the two focuses of it. And I mean, I think it was really good. You get to the end, and they're trying to find the stone mask for immortality. They don't know what it does. Marolo stops Vittorio and kills him, and then Fugo kills Angelica, and Volpe unlocks Purple Haze Distortion, and then it's like, well, that's pretty based. And then he's a member of Passione. I loved the ending scene with him and Giorno, just because it's the two characters that I think were shown so well throughout the entire book, and finally getting to see them interact and really wrapping up a lot of both of their characters, but with what I've talked about. And
this might be a weird thing to add on as well. I also like that Trish went on to be like a singer.
It was cool to get to see Trish.
Yeah, I mean, it's the small things. It's seeing the world progressing, because with
world.
with JoJo, we only get to see how things change multiple years after. The closest distance between parts is part 4 and 5, and even then, that like they just take place at so different parts of like Earth that what happens in Morio doesn't really impact part 5, other than Koichi and Jotaro are interested in what's going on there with those kids. So getting to see what happens like months after this, and it's just nice seeing how the world progresses after Giorno defeats Divallo and takes over. And I like seeing a lot of Fugo's flashbacks. I know we already talked about that a little bit. But wasn't there a section with like him and Abakio where they were on like a hit mission, and it was them talking?
There's a bit of Fugo's interaction with Abakio and that development there.
Yeah, everything about this book is just wonderful. I can't really think of a single thing I dislike. It's Kagoto, just taking all the elements of part 5, adding in his own new ones, and wrapping up Fugo's story in a very satisfying way. And it does him so much justice, given the potential that Araki had with him. To tie back into what I said early on, Fugo's a character of potential, and I love this direction. Like, obviously, we don't live in a world where Araki went through his original plans. Just given both choices, I would rather a story of someone with a lot of rage and hate and anger inside of them go through self-reflection and personal growth than I would a person who just turns traitor then dies. I think this direction was so much better for Fugo as a character, and I'm very happy we could live in a world where Kagoto wrote Purple Haze Feedback.
It's a good book.
It is a very good book.
Anything else, Kyle? Any final words?
No, that's all I have to say about the book. Eventually, Brent and I are going to do a series on JoJo, since he and I will be on recording for quite a while talking about JoJo. We can revisit a lot of Part 5 whenever we talk about Part 5 in depth. But no, this book is great. I'm very happy that Brandon read it, and I'm very happy that you all, since I'm guessing it's toward the end of the video, I'm very happy that you all listened to our discussion, and I hope that you walked away with a lot more than you did coming into it.
Yeah, no, congrats, Kyle. We just recorded the longest Rat's Nest video. I will say, technically speaking, Saiyan Invasion was longer, but I broke Saiyan Invasion into 2. So this is the longest Rat's Nest video.
Let's go.
Almost at an hour. It'll probably hit an hour with the intro and outro. Mm-hmm. Right, so, with all that said, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to, if you're this far in the video, obviously, I almost forgot my outro there. If you're this far in the video, obviously there's something you like, so make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment telling us how good Purple Haze Feedback was, and how right I am with my opinions on Giorno and Fugo. Be sure to check out Goobers and Screens Book Club, link in description. Crazy Diamond's Demonic Heartbreak will be coming out eventually. Honestly, it might come out before this episode. I don't know. We're also doing Bleach. Love Bleach. It's a goodie. It's a good series. Obviously, we got coming up next, I have no clue. After this, maybe Mushoku Tensei Volume 11. I'm planning on starting that soon. That'll be the next review, obviously, weekly Chainsaw Man and One Piece. But thank you all for watching. We hope you enjoyed, and we will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.